So it's always like the cliche first question. What made you a musician? Why did you decide to be a musician? Why did you pick up the guitar?
I think I was lucky. I wasn't aware that I wanted to be a musician, but I was aware that whenever music was around me, I felt good. And when it wasn't around me and I was trying to do ordinary jobs, the world was cold, serious, boring, business-like, you know. As soon as you started messing around with a piano or a guitar and your friends were there, everybody was having a good time. So why choose a serious, boring life when you can have a fun life and feel people's emotions? You know? And it came from church, you know. I used to come home from church and copy the hymns, because there's some good tunes when you're little, you know. Yeah.
So who are you listening to when you were growing up? Who was your influence? Who were you trying to emulate, to imitate?
Identify with, not imitate, because I didn't sing, but I identified with people like Ray Charles, because he sang with so much soul, and I felt what he felt. I don't know why, but something to do with childhood. And the great rock and roll players all were appearing in my town. Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, all on the same night. Can you imagine that? You know, and I was saying to my girlfriend the other day, I remember standing on a cinema seat going nuts, you know, because we've just been watching Glastonbury, everybody going nuts, and I can remember being like that, you know. But for Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, it was exciting. So it wasn't that I wanted to copy them, but I could play bass, and I could play that sort of bass, Chuck Berry bass, and I loved the first groups where you could play that music and have lots of fun and go mad, you know. It was great.
Swing in London, this is like the most beautiful time in the whole history of music, I believe, and you were part of it. How do you remember that? What can you share with us about that period? Was it really so fantastic, or was it blurred because of the drugs?
No. The drug thing really had little effect on my life. It was in its infancy when I first went to London in 65, 66. But everybody you saw was playing straight from the heart. No, there wasn't the neurosis. So you saw Jimi Hendrix, and he played like Jimi Hendrix. You saw Clapton, you saw Jeff Beck, you saw Gary Moore. There wasn't a guitar player that was substandard, and they were all different, and they were all individuals. So it follows. You know, years later, I heard somebody say, there's no mass-produced souls in heaven. But what came after those guitarists was a producer would say, oh no, that sounds like Eric Clapton. You've got to play something different. And so people began to think. And as soon as you start to think, you lose it, because you're not expressing yourself. You're contriving something from your mind, and it all suddenly becomes pseudo-intellectual. That's not my bag. I love somebody that gets up and expresses himself as an individual. And the 60s was just 40 or 50 people that were giants being themselves, and everybody was smiling, everybody was extremely friendly. There wasn't music to irritate you. You go to the first discotheques, and on comes Aretha Franklin, followed by Otis Redding, Sam and Dave. They're just masses of good records with no pretension. It was free. There wasn't anything to wind you up. You know, and I know the Vietnam was going on, you know, but then they had this wonderful feeling that we could do something about it. You know, Bob Dylan and so on. It felt that you were part of something powerful that could change the world. And I still believe the aftermath of that is Live Aid. I think Bob Geldof has proved that one man can get the world together, put them on TV, and shake a few politicians by the lapels, you know. It's a powerful thing. And the 60s, it felt like that every day, not once a year or once a... It was a great time.
Of course, Jimi Hendrix, whenever we read your biography, there is a little couple of lines. He met Jimi Hendrix, he lived with him in one flat. Just please tell us about the legend, how you saw him, how he was, every day, natural.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing much to tell, because he was starting out in London. He was a stranger. He needed somebody to show him around the guitar shops. He came to the same clubs as we did in our group, the Fleur de Lis. So he naturally, because he was our friend, he'd get up and play. And it was fantastic. But at home, he was pretty quiet. He was waiting for his manager to come back from America to tell him to go and make records. And it was about 3 months before he made Hey Joe. Once Hey Joe hit the charts, we saw him at the Savile Theatre when he got up, and 2 days after Sgt. Pepper, he played that, and everything was really close. If Sgt. Pepper was coming out, everybody would have it on the day of release, and 2 days later, Jimi Hendrix was playing it. There was no rivalry, even though Clapton was a little bit worried at first, but Clapton retained his identity, and Hendrix, and then there was Jeff Beck. Hendrix was just a quiet guy at home, and shot to the top with 3 singles straight after. It was All Along the Watchtower and Purple Haze. Then as soon as he went to America, I think that's where he started having problems. And let's face it, if you ever hit record, you're into 20-hour days, aren't you? I've only just found that out. So anybody on 20-hour days and with that adulation, how do you keep going? He died. He didn't keep going. So I tend to think the business killed him.
That's something quite strange for me, especially knowing you a bit, being such a person that plays straight from the heart, being part of such a crazy band as King Crimson. How did it all gel? How it all happened?
It was a bad move in one way, a good move for my story, because it's made a great story. It's a great part of the book, because it shows that you make a mistake by saying yes against every thing in your body saying no. And then you go and do it, and you know that it's not you. Every song's in the wrong key, they put your voice through a mincer. It doesn't do you any good, it destroys everything. People still say, I've got a rotten voice, because they haven't heard my real voice. And so you've got to live with that for 20 years. Huge mistake. On the other hand, you're developing a unique character that has got a different story, a different slant on life. I believe in fate, and you choose your life from reincarnation. I'm into that. So if you've got lessons to learn, I've had huge lessons to learn, and that was one of the largest lessons I had to learn, how to get over King Crimson. And it was hell. It made a lot of money for the architect, but it was like one of these tower blocks. They're not great to live in. Great money for the architect and the builders, but no, it was a huge mistake, and I didn't feel anything for it. And I had to live it down. I still haven't lived it down. I'm still called ex-King Crimson, even though I've had a hit. So it's just a pain, really. But I've grown to see what it all meant when I wrote the book. When you get to the end of the story, everything makes sense. I think I've developed pretty well, despite that.
For nearly 20 years, you've been devoting your time between Scandinavia and Germany, England, just doing pubs, clubs. How would you sum up this period of your life?
Well, I hung about as a bass player in London after King Crimson, but because of King Crimson, they said, oh no, he's a classical rock player. And of course I was more of a Hendrix bass player, or a Cream bass player. So I was tainted with that. So I never really got a good bass job after that. So I had to develop something else if I was going to stay in it. So I started singing, on taking it more seriously. And the way to practice that is to sing every day. And by 1983, I found that I had to sing to make a living. The economy had changed, and whereas places couldn't afford a whole band, they could afford one guy that could hold it together for 4 or 5 hours. And I got that off pretty well. And I got good at it. I was doing 5 hours a night, 7 days a week, for 18 years. Now, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have a voice, because I would have stayed where I was in the King Crimson days, which was an okay situation, but because of the sheer work that you imagine being an athlete and practicing, you get pretty fast as a runner. It's the same with singing or playing. Even Robert Fripp and King Crimson, you know, he practices every day, so he's a fast guitarist. I have to sing every day to pay the rent. So I developed a voice, which was a commercial voice. It had appeal because it sounded like I lived a little, which in Scandinavia you do, because it's constant travelling. You make friends for 2 weeks and you say goodbye, and it's a bit like being a drifter, which is another part of the story. So you spend your whole life thinking and developing a character. You can't do that staying at home in a comfortable job. My friends of my age group are completely different. So I don't exactly regret the path I took. It was the road less travelled. I've got a friend who's lived a normal rock life. He was in John Wetton. He joined Family. He joined King Crimson, he joined Uriah Heep, he joined Roxy Music, he joined Asia, he joined UK, and now he's John Wetton. That's all rock and roll. And we are completely different. Because I had to stand on my own in an alien situation. If you're in a big rock concert hall, they're all going like that before you speak. But I had to win every night. And I always got booked back, and that makes you feel good and gets you a little bit of confidence. And some people are born with confidence, aren't they? They're born, you know, at 16 years old, they're cocky and cocksure. And I wasn't like that. I was kind of quiet, you know. So it's taken me my life, a whole lifetime, to get where some people are at. You know, Paul McCartney at 21, writing great songs. It took me till I was 50, you know. I don't know what it means apart from it's a very nice time in life to get some cash because, you know, you haven't got long left. So you can say, oh well, you know, we're safe now, aren't we? But if you get a lot of money at 21, you can blow it by the time you're 23. You know. So I think it's a great time, and you haven't gone nuts, you know. It's a good time.
Let's talk about the miracle of How Wonderful You Are, what it made on the charts, how it, you know, surprised all the people. And did you feel like a little sweet revenge on the whole showbiz, you know, writing this tune that was so backwards that it was, you know, really hip?
Yeah. There was
and the origin of the song as well.
Well, first of all, I wasn't looking for a hit, which is a nice way to be and a nice place to be in your heart, because you're doing it because people like what you're doing 4 or 5 nights a week. That was the first thing, so I wasn't looking for it. I didn't need it. I wasn't desperate for it. So you went to the studio and thinking, let's pretend it's 1958. Let's pretend it's Ray Charles. How would he have done it? Well, we didn't have the technology, so let's just play live. One take, poof, that's all, you know, that's how it was done. And the atmosphere on that record is exactly like the atmosphere of the records I bought when I was 14 years old. And the public telephoned the radio stations as soon as they heard it to find out more, because they felt that thing. It wasn't contrived. It wasn't somebody saying, can you do this, can you do it? did it without thinking too much. The inspiration behind it, there's several, in that the first inspiration was this old hooker gets up in the middle of my set. She's a dreadful woman, and she plays the piano and she sings Cry Me a River, and it's the most fantastic voice, and she's got soul. And all the old singers had terrible lives, and that's why they've got so much soul, because the child is still alive inside them. That heart and soul that they were born with has not died, despite the life they've chosen, whether it's prostitution or drugs or anything low life, you know. So there she is, 55, no teeth, completely finished, and you say, do you know how wonderful you are? You know, you still got it, baby. You know, that's your potential inside there. That's your potential. So I went home and I used the thought for my own girlfriend, who also thought that, you know, I want to make a difference in the world. I don't want to do an ordinary job and go to work every day. I just want to do something like Bob Geldof has done something. And so she had a low opinion of herself, and thankfully she hasn't anymore. And it's about, we're all pushed down so often, whether it's a child, in our childhood, or at school. And it's lovely, it's a lovely thought that we've all got tremendous potential to be more. And what our heart tells us, but somebody's stopping us, and usually it's us. Usually it's one of us that says, no, well, I'd like to be a movie star, but I don't think I can be. Of course you can, you know. You just have to go to the right place and be determined and fulfill your dream, whatever it may be. So that whole song wasn't a thoughtless piece of work, or it wasn't sentimental. I looked up the word sentimental. That means false. False? It was not. It was real, and it was sincere. So anybody that thinks it's sentimental, you should check what that word means. It's an American word meaning false emotion. Nothing's false about what I do.
Jazzy, if we could develop this little subject, because having a chance to know you a bit better, I figured that you're a great philosopher. What would you say about your philosophy on life? How would you share it with us and inspire us in a way? Because I think you're a great role model for some guys who are 50 plus or whatever, that you can really be, coming from the ashes and be powerful.
It's always developing. It never stops, because life throws, just when you think you've got it sorted out, something else throws you something and you're knocked off balance. So you're continually addressing the path. And I've got it down to two things: fairness and good manners. And I've dealt with a lot of people in the last 3 or 4 years that are neither fair nor good mannered. And to make my life happy again, because believe me, a year before my success, I was immensely happy. And that shone through in the work. And I think I was well on the way to sort of some kind of sanity and a good philosophy. But I was knocked off balance with the success, and I met some very unfair people and bad-mannered people. So that developed that side. I thought, okay, I'm ready to do it again. Let's define what I have to avoid. So you avoid unfair people and you avoid bad manners. Unfortunately, in my business, that sort of narrows it down to about 3 people out of 1,000, which is great. You just deal with those 3 people. And anybody that's unfair, you don't answer the door. That's the only way, because if you're going to try and deal with unfair people, they're always going to be unfair, they're always going to make you unhappy. So walk away and choose. You can choose who to deal with. You don't have to, you're not going to be loved by everybody. And you don't have to love everybody. You can try, but if they're unfair, bye, go away. I don't want you in my life. So I'm slightly different to how I was 4 years ago. I'm meaner, a little bit meaner. But the boy inside is still the same. But you do have to have some kind of protection. Otherwise you'll be crawling with maggots. There'll be nothing left of you. You know what I mean?
And I had the pleasure just to read your biography. It's a terrific read. So how did you discover this bug for writing in you? Because I know that you're a great lyricist and great composer, and then suddenly you're a great writer, a storyteller.
It surprised me that I would remember my life. I found myself trapped in a situation where I was gazing out the window for a week thinking, well, I'm not allowed to make records, I can't write songs. I think, what shall I do, Let's write a book. Let's see if I can write a book. Even if I only did 1 page a day, it's 365 pages in a year. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote the story, and it's too much. So then my author friend, David Nobbs, who's a famous author in England, wrote Reggie Perrin. I said, would you read this, David, and tell me what you think? It's my first book. I don't want to make an idiot of myself. Done that before. So he read it. He said, it's a fantastic read, but I can help you edit. You can't have 6 pages just because he's your friend. Nobody's interested in your friend, And I know you love him, and So he would put a red pencil through it, and we cut it down from 180,000 words to 130,000 words. And then I submitted it, and it was accepted straight away. And then they said, you have to cut this to 90,000 words. And I thought, oh no, but the man that I worked with was an ex-Fleet Street reporter, editor of a big newspaper in England. And he was the same age as me, and we got on great. And he said, it's no problem, just by removing an and and a but, you'd be surprised how many words you can lose. And he just cut it. And there were some childhood stories that I missed, but it's a really tight read now. You turn the pages quickly, and I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed learning from 2 experts. It was like having 2 professors, and I was in the frame of mind where I wanted to learn. I wasn't going to argue, and then it went to a 30-year-old editor, and then I started arguing. But I was helped along through that. So it's not finished. I mean, it comes out in January now. But there'll be some legal stuff to change at the end, because the bad guys are going to get away with it, because the law says they can. So, but by the time you get to the end of the book, it's a great story anyway. So, I don't care.
The second book?
Well, that's the
second.
The second book is it's an escape story, it just makes me laugh. I was determined to make a laugh on every page, and it's only, I don't know, 100 pages. But if ever I wake up in a bad mood, I get the computer on and I just read those first 2 chapters and I'm laughing. And that is an unusual nonsense story, but it has a grain of truth. You could say our society is crazy, couldn't you? Our politicians are crazy. Everything about life is crazy. I've made the story completely crazy, but underneath the truth is emerging, and it's fun. It's about a 52-year-old dwarf living with his mother, working for a taxidermist. It's bonkers, wacky, but it makes me laugh, and it makes those that read it laugh. We'll see, but it's a great job. You're on your own, you're writing, you're in a world of your own. You're looking through the window, and then when you've done it, you go out into the real world, and you do get shaken up a bit, I have to say, because you've cut yourself off too much. So it's good to come out and do a tour occasionally. Otherwise, you will disappear. into a world of total isolation and fantasy.
As you mentioned that the book has been very funny, and those who have the pleasure to know you a bit better, they know that you're a great joker. You love to joke. How would you describe your sense of humor? What makes you laugh? And give us an example of something really extraordinary that happened in your life. And I guess there are thousands of examples. Just to make Gordon.
A lot of musicians have a great sense of humor. Stars are a bit more serious. They take themselves seriously, but musicians have a kind of humor. Nothing is serious because their lives are dangerous, so you can't take life too seriously, otherwise you cry. I like surrealism, and when this idea that you can't do something, well, do it. You can do anything. There are no rules about behaviour. And my girlfriend said, "Look, I've got my mother coming, and my brother and sister for the first time. Don't mess around. Be on your good behaviour." And I wanted to smoke, and nobody smoked. So I wore a gas mask at dinner, and she was furious. Now, she didn't think that was funny, but I thought it was fantastic. But it doesn't make you popular. Just don't invite him to parties. It looked great. It looked great. And, or a gorilla suit, I've got a chicken suit now. It makes you laugh. And there's plenty to make us miserable. You just put the TV on. Here are the news, But you can soon. I think the world is beautiful, and I think the world is ugly. You can either add to the ugliness or add to the beauty. It's your choice. And if you're a little bit crazy and make yourself laugh, it gets you through the day. It's less boring, I think. But the only thing is, what I've noticed with humour in the music business, post-Beatles, because John Lennon had the same sort of humour, and Ringo and George. But moving on 30 years, if an artist is joking, they say, oh, they won't take your music seriously. Now, isn't that interesting? Doesn't that tell you something, that we've become neurotic? That you cannot be yourself, you cannot have fun, because if you're laughing, you can't possibly have a serious thought or an important thought. Now that's nuts. That in itself is nuts and laughable. So it's not as much fun in the game as it once was, because everybody was fun once, and now, it's all terribly serious, it's art. I didn't go to art school. I don't know what they teach people at art school, but I don't imagine they have a lot of fun, and they certainly come out very serious about themselves. I don't know. Tell me, help me here.
With hindsight, what would you say? Is there something that you really regret, that you have to pay a really big price for what you are now, and just having that kind of perspective look on your life? Do you regret being who you are?
I regret not learning martial arts. I think it must be very powerful, being able to flick somebody upside down. For a start, they respect you, which they don't if they think that they can beat you up, So as far as fears are concerned, I think it must be marvellous to be a tough guy. I might take it up in my latter years, just to see what it's like to be able to flatten somebody with one chop, Because I'm sure you wouldn't get messed about quite so much. Because people are basically cowards, and they would take you if they think they can beat you. But if they know that you mean it, they wouldn't cross you. So I think that's my one regret, that I didn't learn to kill people. Not that I want to, but it's just a protection thing, Do you understand? I don't want to be a carpet all my life. Do I? It's not fair, is it? It's not good manners. It's not fair. It's not good manners. Sure. Don't mess with me, sunshine. I'd like that. It's never too late to learn that stuff.
And the last thing, just to kill this conversation, Poland, because you keep coming to Poland quite a few times, and I figured that maybe this country, in a way, there was extra connection with the Polish people, that they really, understood your music properly. They not all understood the lyrics, but somehow they got you that it's straight from the heart, and they let you into their hearts. What would you say about Poland as a country? And
I think we feel the same things. If I felt that I've been walked on in my history, I think the Poles feel that they've been walked on in their history. That's one connection that ties up and makes sense. The Russians or the Germans, that's one that makes sense. The other is that I had a very amazing dream. There's a song on one of my albums called Go Tell Sarah, and the first night that we shared the same hotel, separate rooms, you understand, we dreamed the identical dream, and we dreamt that we were prisoners of war in Poland. So we must have been Polish, I think. And I've recently visited that prison, and I saw the wire that I saw in my dream, with Sarah and me were being separated. Now I think I might have been Polish in a previous life. That's fanciful, and you can call me nuts. But there's a connection there. There's something beautiful and real that I feel when I come here. And I love the balance between the East and the West, because it's not all McDonald's. It's not all crass. It's got a little bit of both. And so you've got two cultures sort of fighting it out. And so you've got more potential, really. I think there's great potential here for sanity. I hope so. There's something there that I love. It's warmth. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's the wacko thing. But I used to be a Pole myself.
And the very last thing, that we're going to see a concert in a second. And how does it feel when you're on stage, when you're singing? How does it feel in your head? Do you sing to one person in the audience, you pick up someone in the audience, or you sing, or what's coming on your mind all the time when you're singing? Do you have some, images, persons?
I don't think that I'm a natural star type person that wants to sing and be loved by an audience. I think I'm sharing a mutual vibration that's a love thing and a pain thing, because when I sing, I'm reliving, because every song I've written I can put somebody's name to. I didn't make them up, which annoys me when critics say, oh, it's fabricated. I know what that song's about. I know who the person was. So, there's a song called Someone I Knew. One night of the tour, I hope nobody noticed, but I was crying because I was reliving that night when I wrote it. And it was just absolute agony. So I'm not a pop singer, I'm not a pop star. I'm just somebody that writes songs because of what happened to me. And I don't think I'll ever be that comfortable being whatever you want to call me. It's great to achieve. It's great to write something that people want to share and buy and get into. But there's a lot more to being in this game than that, as you know. And I'm not quite tuned up for that yet. I'm too stuck in my ways, And I love doing it. But it's not quite the same as, look at me, aren't I great? It's not that at all.
Would you say that singing and performing for you is a kind of therapy?
It's some kind of therapy. It's a kind of tragedy, really. Some of the songs are a little bit tragic, but they're my story. The books help. Writing the book really helps. Kind of, hang on a minute, you've got a fantastic life. You've got no reason to complain. that happened because of that, and if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't have got there, and hey, look where you are, you lucky boy. And it's turned out to be a fantastic life. But talk to me 10 years ago, and it would have been a different conversation. Where do you think you're going, Gordon? You know, you're nowhere. And it's just a beautiful time to have reached the top of the mountain where you started 40 years ago. Because once you've climbed one mountain, well, John Lennon said, well, there's nothing up here. It's just the fact that you've finished something that you started out doing. So when people get hits when they're 20 and they're thrown away, like so many are today, I wouldn't have wanted that, because you've got to live for 30 years saying, oh, you had a hit in 19, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, when you were 20, oh, what are you doing now? Well, you know, I'm a managing director of a double glazing firm. Yeah, it's very good. I've got 5 children and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I'd much rather have had a tougher life, met a lot of people, had a really good time and a really bad time, because you've got a story to tell and it makes a good book. So it's a great time for me right now. And I now can see what's going to happen in the next 12 months. I had my doubts, you know, for a little while, but back on my feet again, and I've got a bunch of new tunes, and I'm excited about making another record, which I've just started. So it's amazing, really, that you ever pick yourself up after some of the stuff you go through. But you do, and everybody does, you know, in whatever the job they're doing. We all have these ups and downs and roller coaster life, but it does make your life a bit more fun than just that, you know. So, a couple of books, a couple more albums, and, you know, a couple more critics saying that I'm dull, you know. Who cares, you know?